right. Hello. Get my. Hello. I'm just getting used to live. Sorry, it was a little bit late. It's storming here, so I couldn't use the area in my house I was planning on using. So here I am. So we had to move everything into a side bedroom that we got here. So yep. So I hope everybody's doing great. I have never done a live before, so I'll try to keep things as concise and efficient as I can. But I don't have a lot prepared or anything on the table. So if people have questions, definitely keep rolling them in. I can see over here on the side. And I did put a block on how quickly people can post just so I can keep up. I'm only an elected official, so I can't maintain everyone asking a million questions at the same time. But there you go. Thank you, everybody, saying that it'll go well and that I look good. So that's 50 pounds, 60 pounds now off. So thank you. Yep, it's what a breakdown can do. You lose a lot of weight in that case. It's here to listen, no pressure. All right. Thank you, Amanda and family, for that. So I know your husband is part owner of Moving to Orlando, but what company are you with? I am with La Rosa Realty, is technically the broker. So Moving to Orlando is not a brokerage, and it never was. So it was a weird branding thing because Pete couldn't actually understand, as far as my opinion, the concept that like we ourselves were not a broker. So like Ruben, Danielle, Drake, they didn't work for us. We couldn't tell them to do things and not to do things. You can only threaten, like, we won't give you leads anymore, but you can't tell, like, we have no authority to tell them they must work or they must do something or that they owe something unless they sign a team agreement of some type. And we never could even get that off the ground because Pete and I just could not come together on terms for what the team agreement would be. So yeah, even Moving to Orlando is not a brokerage. So no one works there. There's no actual employees of that company. I'm more like 250 pounds off. Thank you. So it feels that way because it's just like everything is not a slog to get through in the day. Whereas before, every day I was just walking and I felt exhausted and tired, and even getting up and having, the ability to exercise and walk in somewhere was it was a lot. So that was more than I was taking on. So are you still in real estate? Yes, I'm still in real estate. Moving to Orlando and the other company that I was starting, it's all just been in, I don't know, purgatory, I guess I would say, because, Pete sold his half, I sold my half. The person, Ruben, was one of the agents. That's who Pete sold his half to. And then Ruben moved. And so it became a question of, my husband he has a license, but doesn't actively do real estate. The person who did do real estate moved away. So there were no realtors left. So then they had to ask me, why don't you come back and do the real estate side of things, which I'm not willing to do because Ruben's still paying Pete and I'm not earning any more income on Pete's behalf. So it's kind of left things at a standstill, and then everything's in legal wherever it may be. So soon it will be doing stuff. I just now have to like get everything dismantled, I guess at this point would be the word. You're still in real estate? Yes. Is this brought to us by Dreams Unlimited Travel? No, it is not. So I don't think so. I don't think I'm on great terms with them. I don't think they'll be hiring me back. So nor will I want to go back. How was the cruise? Cruise was great. I just did an MSC cruise. It was a 3-day out of Port Canaveral. So if anybody ever wants a cruise where you can just go to the private island, that's what it does. It goes to their private island and it just docks for 3 days. So if you're a beach person, that's a definitely reasonable cruise line price wise to go to. So could definitely recommend that. Not as great for longer stuff because there's not a lot of activities, but that was mostly for us to go to the beach and have a good time. My dogs are right outside the door. They're very upset that they could not stay in, but I knew if they did come in, they'd want to go out like halfway through. So they're outside, they're hanging out. So yeah. It's a lot. You look so much lighter, and I'm not talking about the weight, although that looks great too. It's nice to see you doing well. Such a huge difference from watching the old videos. Well, thank you. I don't have a gun to the back of my head, so that's probably the calmness that you might be sensing right now. Do you know or have an idea of what Pete spent the Amex debt on? I do know. I'm going to say allegedly because I've only been heard through hearsay. I'm not part of the legal battle or anything, but I've talked. There's not a lot of things that I think you could spend that amount of money on in like a month, like or in one shot through. So I can't specifically say, but it's not something that's on Disney Cruise Line. So I can attest to that. So let's see. Glad you come out the other side. Laser hair therapy. Laser hair therapy. Oh, hey Jimmy. So have you heard from Pete at any of this recent stuff? I have not heard from Pete in over a year at this point. He was in the middle of arguing with me one day, and I just blocked him on everything. So I don't know. I don't know if he still attempted to say anything, but if he did, I didn't hear about it. So that's kind of been peaceful. There's been this looming, is he going to reach out as far as like 12-step program? Because when I heard he was going to rehab, I know that was a big thing for him when he was talking about the last time he went to rehab and having to reach out to people and tell them he's sorry for things. And I can't even imagine what that must be like. But I don't expect to be getting an apology anytime soon for anything. How do you think Pete was able to dupe so many people, listeners and employees, into believing he was someone he was not? I don't think Pete ever really duped anyone. I think that when people watch things like YouTube or a TV show or whatever, or let's take a reality show like Big Brother or Survivor, something like that, they don't see them as people as much. They're a character. And I think Pete does such a good job at being a character that people don't associate that with real life almost. Like that can't be a person. And we talk about it sometimes with YouTube. And when I go on YouTube, we need to come away from the video either feeling entertained or educated. And I feel like Pete's really the only person on the show. And during my time there, the only person that ever came on the show that was an entertainer, whereas other people were more educators. So you're seeing this person that you're like, whoa, he's really outlandish, I guess would be the thing. So you either love him, you hate him, but it is like, wow, he's somebody that's willing to speak up and say, these are my opinions, and feel really strongly in those opinions. So I think that's really where people get on board with it. So I don't think anybody needs to feel duped. I think it's just, that's the character. I think he started that way in life to a lesser degree. And I think as the show progressed and got more popular, it gave him a bigger outlet and window to get to be that way towards people. I mean, I've always said that like money doesn't change people. Money lets you be who you already are. And that's it. Like you either get money and you change. And that's really when people see. But it's like everyone I've ever known that got money, they just became a worse version or the same version of what they already were. So I'd say he just got to be himself. Let's see. How do you think Pete was able to do? Oh, there we go. You should feel happy you're free of that person. I definitely do. Thank you for that. I saw you on a bus at Disney World and got absolutely starstruck and said something silly and awkward, but you were so nice to me and gave me a great smile. Oh, thank you. Sending you love and support. Do you have any contact with John while you were there? While I was there? I did speak with John a few times while I was there, like worked at the company, just because he was kind of my boss with Dreams when I was a travel agent. And then when we would take trips, we did an ABD in London, Paris. So I spent a fairly decent amount of time with John and Kevin. John was always somebody that I liked as a one-off, like dinner, with that stuff. I don't know him well enough to say this is what I feel about him in general. I know I'm the only other person on the planet that's owned a business with him. And it took me all of 5 months to be like, listen, I have to fight back with this person. And then it took all of a year and a half for me to be like, I'm done with you threatening people. I'm done with you threatening employees. I'm done with you trying to mismanage the income that this company brings in. You're trying to hire your family members. You're trying to do all these things. Like, I'm out. Like, you have to stop. You have to do things by the law. You have to do things correctly and legally, and or else I'm gone. And you know what? We were pulling in a lot of money, and I was like, that's the risk that I have to take to get away from this very stressful person. So John's known him a lot longer than me. If he doesn't recognize how Pete is, then he doesn't need to be running a business. So, or he doesn't care. One of the two. And that's my view on that. So, how do you think? I keep going to the same one. How do you think Pete duped so many people? Let's see. Do you still go to the parks regularly? I'm in the parks all the time. Actually, I go to Epcot a lot. My husband and I, we actually have we do a wheel that we have where we'll spin it once a month, and it gives us like what countries in Epcot that we're gonna like spend the most time in, or if we want to get drinks, like this is where we're gonna start, because we'll do like drink around the world, like usually once a month. And this year, we were like, hey, let's once a month try to do it, and then we'll spin the wheel that says what country to start in, because we were like, we don't have to be Mexico or Canada people. We can be any people that we want to, anywhere in the world. Let's see. Sending love and support. Absent Pete thoughts on John and Corey in the future of the Diz. I don't see things. I'm not optimistic personally with it. John is a lot smarter of a person than Pete is, so it will really come down to whether John lets other people, is smart enough to say this isn't for me and let other people do the stuff they need to do. And that's really where I think it comes down to it. And then other people stepping up and saying, okay, what's wrong with the show and what's the direction we need to go and what's the ultimate goal? As far as I knew, whenever I worked there, I would always tell people after the show, hey, I was lost while we were doing the show because a lot of the things felt like inside jokes. Like it could be Craig and Rhino kind of conversing and having a conversation. I'm like, I don't know what this is. And they'll say, oh, it's a throwback to like some episode that everybody loved in 2013. Or Pete would make references to people that I don't know. I never knew. I didn't know JL. I know her now. Like that kind of stuff. I didn't know Dustin, but now I know him. So a lot would come up. Whereas I would always tell them as a new viewer, if I just randomly clicked this show, I wouldn't be able to follow along. I wouldn't know what's going on. If it's just on the sidebar on YouTube and they're like, oh, this is episode 1200 and something. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to me because I'm clicking a random episode. This isn't a Netflix series. I'm not starting at episode 1. So it needs to catch my attention and keep me in. And that's not going to work for me if the first 10 minutes of it is catching up on people's pets and people's kids and what people watched on TV over the weekend. Like that's just, I'm gone. I'm gone in 2 minutes. Like if it didn't start going somewhere. So I don't think you can get new viewers that way. So as long as they can understand that and catch that, then I think it could be okay. Like I don't know that anything's riveting enough to really take off, but it's just so saturated now that people can get Disney content anywhere, really. Absent thoughts. Let's see. Gambling, casino, got some guesses in there. Gambling or prostitution. Whoever is making that money on prostitution, I really, really feel like they really are doing well for themselves. So if somebody spends that amount and if somebody receives that amount, there's a lot happening with that. Do you know if there's any agents that are really standing by Pete in this? Michaela is my agent, and I know where she stands, but do you think there's other agents on Team Pete? I don't know. So yes, I know where two agents stand. I don't want to say either names. I know one agent stands fairly firmly with me, but obviously I'm not going to say who that is because I don't want to hurt them. Another agent firmly stands against me. And I had determined last night that I wasn't going to mention this because I don't want anyone getting fired or losing their job and all that stuff. But because it came up directly, an agent did reach out to me on Facebook last night in a private message. They sent me I would say what was essentially a Pete level message in how vicious it was against me. And I don't want to like I don't want to say their name because I don't want to upset someone to the point that they like come after me or whatever. Because anyone who's so angry that I've lobbied accusations, which I didn't lobby accusations. Like I mean, I have to a degree in that Pete has done stuff that I can prove as being true, but Dustin's the person that came out and was saying, "Hey, this is what he did to me." Charles is the person who came out and said, "Hey, Pete was drugging people and had cameras in the bathrooms." And ultimately, Pete's the person who spent $1 million. So I don't know necessarily where I'm the one who. I'll just read the thing. Forget it. Hold on. Okay. So here was the agent. I don't want to hold it against everybody there, but at least one agent. I don't know exactly what everybody else's feelings were. So somebody messaged, and pardon my French on this. So if my mom ever watches this, I'm sorry that this is what I read out. Hey, heard you became a total loser, or perhaps you always have been. Hope you can sleep at night knowing how much you hurt thousands of people. I always hoped you were a good person, but kind of always sensed all you give a shit about is yourself. I feel bad for you and your miserable life. You will continue to be broke and have no real friends probably for the rest of your life. So great to meet such a loser like you. Goodbye, you piece of shit. Hope you live a fucking miserable life. So that was what one of the agents had to send and say about me. So obviously, I did talk to somebody else. They were like, yes, you are not popular with the agents. There's a lot of angst towards you. So, I mean, anybody out there, one of the agents, if they do hear or listening, I do hate that things came this way. As I said from the beginning on Tattle, like I was never trying to ruin lives or hurt people or anything like that. I just wanted to get away from the situation. And, things really just started piling up when Dustin came around and started saying what happened to him. And, it, got fanned more when Charles came into the picture. So it's, I definitely didn't mean to take away clients from people or something. So I hope that other people can feel okay and not be, you know, as upset as this individual is about what's going on. So and I would hope that if this was their child or spouse or anything that was going through this, that they would maybe feel differently. But some people can't feel that empathy until the next level of things, until it happens to them, I guess. Um, let's see. Well, that just jumped. I'm sorry. I have to go back up. If there's agents with attitude. Okay. Your body language on the disc really did look like you were a hostage. That being said, you look great now, bro. Thank you. Yes, that is. It's not like it was more about opinions because I really had to. So Pete's the main. So the table's round, and Pete was the center chair, and so he always had me right to his right of him, and it would just be the whole show. Like as people would be speaking, there would just be glancing, 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 like when you're not on camera. And anytime it was my turn to speak, Pete would be right next to me, just kind of side eyeing, is the way it felt to me. And I knew aligned the opinion. Like I need to make sure I don't say anything too messy. I need to make sure I don't do anything too wild as my opinion because I don't want to hear about it after the show. I don't want to get yelled at for having an opinion. And that was just the way it felt to me. He may not have been doing that. That was just, I think because of all the outside stuff, I really was like, I need to mind my P's and Q's while I'm on camera. It's a shame he cannot be held accountable for his actions. Yeah. Was there something in particular that prompted this live stream? Oh, hey, Bryce. No, not well. Dustin doing his is really what prompted me. Like, hey, I can do this. I haven't done a I haven't done a live stream ever, but I haven't been on camera in a while. I am about to get started doing real estate videos again, and really for the last year, it's been tough to get through a video because I don't know. I get anxious at that point because I'm just so used to doing it in a fly by night way that I think I just PTSD, I don't know what you'd want to call it, but it's been something going on that there's been this like mental block and I'm like I got to just hop over that, and a live stream definitely felt like the way to do that. Are you still in touch with anyone from the Diz? I am a little bit. I don't want to say just because I don't want anyone getting in trouble. I actually have no idea what their situation is with being able to talk to me. I don't know what's happening there, so I don't want to mess anybody's day up. Where's your tank top? I'm not wearing. I was wearing a tank top about 5 minutes before we started, and I switched it because I had to switch rooms. So, and if anybody's wondering what that means, um, uh, tank top, like back in 2020, someone on another website, I think it's called Gossip Guru, made a comment about I was a verified tank top wearer, as if it was a bad thing, and I just thought it was really funny and ran with it. And so, me and a few friends will. If I'm wearing a tank top, it's a whole thing. If I wear one, so it was just a really weird. I'm assuming knock against me that I would wear tank tops, but verified tank top wearer. So just not today. Sean, you look phenomenal. So happy that you can share your story. Can't believe how crazy the Italy cruise was for you. Well, it sure was. So it was that was a trip I would do again. Not with Pete, but I would do it again. So I've been back to Italy since. It's great. Do you think Disney knows about him? Absolutely, they know. Disney knows in general what's going on. So, have you talked to Tyler Crouch recently? I did message Tyler on Instagram, and I just sent him a message saying like, "Hey, thank you for kind of backing up people's stories and all that." I don't think he ever responded to it, but I think because I don't follow him, it may just be in his other messages too. But I mean, we were never close, so I haven't spoken to him in years, like since he got here. So, or I mean, since he left. So that was the last time we spoke. And let's see, did you ever enjoy working for the Diz, or was it completely miserable? I liked I liked getting to do a lot of the stuff. Like I enjoyed getting to experience restaurants, the parks in a different way than I could have afforded to before, like as a kid, because you don't usually go and get to try, even if you get to try a restaurant, you didn't get to try four appetizers and four entrees, four desserts, all that direction of things. And Pete did know enough people to get some access into other places that I never would have or would have spent money to do. So that was really fun. I liked that part of it, but ultimately it was just stressful. I was trying to avoid coworkers because I didn't want them to know what was going on behind the scenes because I knew it would make them a target. And essentially, I mean, me and Dustin joked about it where we both felt our job there was to be a babysitter. So that's always how it felt. We're babysitting Pete. That's our role. Leave us alone because we're just trying to like babysit this man so he doesn't blow everything up. That's it. Let's see. Very off topic, but is your dresser from Pottery Barn? No, it's from City Furniture actually. So it's literally in their clearance section. So then the bed was like with it as a thing. They're a pair. So let's see. This is a great breakdown of how he was viewed. If Pete did reach out to you, would you speak to him? Oh God, no. No, no, I wouldn't talk to Pete. Like that's you just can't believe anything he says. Like that's it. Pete is just I don't even want to say he's a liar. He's just delusional. Like he's not lying. Well, I guess technically it's a lie, but like he believes what he's saying. And that's what's scary about it is you're trying to rationalize with someone who's completely irrational. So there's no point. And even if he used to apologize to me all the time when he would do stuff, but eventually I was like, this apology is going to last about 30 seconds until you're mad at me again. So this is not, well, I mean, and I think what happened for me was that because things started consensual, I didn't think I had a way out because I'm like, well, I voluntarily got myself in the situation. But now I can look back on it and be like, okay, you know what? Would I feel this way if it was someone else? And it really wasn't till Dustin and I had our phone call the first time where he was telling me his story. And I was like, hey, like this is disgusting. This is sick. Like I'm so glad you're out of that. That's horrible. That my viewpoint changed where I'm like, hey, well, if I'll give this advice to somebody else, like, just because mine started consensually, that is what it turned into. I mean, mine became, hey, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to date you. I don't love you. I don't like you. I'm not with you. And then it being, okay, well, then you're not going to have your job and it didn't even start as that. It was like, okay, yes, we can be friends. And that would last about 2 days. And then just enough for me to be like, okay, I can just work here. I don't have to be with you. I don't have to do anything. And then get me off somewhere else. Sorry. Get me off somewhere else. And then here we go. Like, then here's the threats, here's the stuff coming in. And I'm like, now I'm stuck on the other side of the world. So now I'm stuck on a cruise ship. Now I have nowhere to go and no one's going to believe me. And the more I kind of got paraded around, the worse it got as a thing. And the hole kept getting dug deeper and deeper was really what happened. But it really wasn't till I talked to Dustin where I could look at my own perspective and be like, whoa, like, what was that? Like, that was something. If you were still part of the Diz, how would you go about rebranding to remove the Pete stigma? I think, I don't know necessarily offhand how I would do it, but I do know that it can be done because with moving to Orlando, about a year and a half in, there was a point where you'll notice Pete stopped hosting. And I did have to say a lot of things to get that to happen because I felt watching back moving to Orlando episodes that Pete, which I already knew, knows absolutely nothing about real estate and doesn't care about real estate and is just pretty much wasting a seat at the table. He's wasting time. He's wasting a spot. There's no reason for him to be here. And of course, you can't go tell somebody, hey, you're feckless, like, get out. So you have to sit there and ego stroke. And essentially my path was, hey, my ego can't handle your popularity. Like, I want some fame. I want some love too. And you're sucking the air out of the room. Would you grant me the ability to make this happen so that I can do this? And I mean, luckily he was like, absolutely, I'll step aside. Thank you for, recognizing that in yourself. You're growing as a person, blah, blah, blah. I'll head back out to where I need to go. There he went. And while viewership did go down, the right viewers came along because I wanted to sell people houses. I wasn't looking for Diz people to watch real estate shows. I wanted people to buy houses to watch real estate shows. So our sales did really well from that point, and the actual audience became about 70%. It started 99% Diz fans and like 1% organic, and it moved to about 70% organic, like moving to Orlando people, and then about 30% were still Diz people. So it can be done. I just don't exactly know offhand how to do it, but it's a slow process. You said there was a second layer with Pete's house that haven't pieced together. Can you share? No, I can, I think, but like I need to like talk to an attorney first. So, because I don't know. I know what it is. I just don't know. I don't know. I'm not liable, but like I just don't know what they settled with things to know if I say that this is what's happening, if that's still true. So everything would be an allegedly. So that's the one little bit. So, but we'll wait and see how the lawsuit that's currently pending shakes out to see if that piece comes into play there, because I think it will. Subsequently, has John reached out to you to get more information, and didn't John know about Pete's character? I have not heard from John. I haven't heard from John. So, but I mean, as far as character goes, like I said before, if John didn't realize how Pete is, then he's really stupid. So, because I think pretty much everybody recognizes how Pete is in general. And it's funny because we actually had a client with moving to Orlando, and every now and then Pete would want to jump in and work with a client, and I'm like, oh God, no, please don't do that. But this guy was a huge fan of the Diz. He wanted to work with Pete, and Pete took him on as a client. So just imagine you are going to purchase a home. You have $500,000 to spend, and you are going to spend it with the person you love the most on YouTube that you are just such a fan of. And they get you as their client, and you text them after 9 p.m., just a text message at 9 o'clock, and just say, oh, like, hey, thanks for helping me, blah, blah, blah. 2 a.m. rolls around. Pete sees the text messages. So he's still awake. Like, Pete is up at 2 o'clock in the morning, sees the text message, and then texts the client and says, like, don't you ever text me this late again. What is wrong with you? You only text people during business hours. How dare you contact me after business hours? Which, what are business hours for real estate? But and then he's messaging the guy at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, why don't you message during business hours? Like, that's all you have to do, Pete. And I got really upset and I was like, why would you yell at a customer for doing that? The guy was peeved, I would say, but nice about the situation. He did talk to me about it and he said, whoa, I always enjoy a Pete rant. I just didn't know how it'd feel when it was happening to me. And I was like, well, yeah, well, get used to it. So, because you still got another month before you close, so let's see how things shake up. So he closed. He tagged me and Pete in a post on Facebook that was like, "Thank you guys so much for helping me through the process. It was amazing." And then Pete doubled down on the post and posted a message being like, thank you so much for the kind words. And just remember, like, don't message people outside of business hours. And I'm like, oh my God, Pete, let this go. Let this man message you outside of business hours. He just spent $500,000 with you. Like, stop. Like, it's stop. Just that stupid rock. Like, I wish I'd have that to like throw at him. Okay. Is Gio out of the picture now? Yes. Any rumors about what happened there and if he left, if it had to do with the lawsuits? I don't know when he left. I think based on the stories I've heard, it was around March of some time. And I was told a story in December. No, I was told whenever he got back from rehab, February. I was told that Pete, my husband and Ruben, as the Moving to Orlando owners, went to dinner with Pete, and they had came back and told me that Pete and Gio did not end up going to move in with Pete at that point. And they asked why, and he said because Gio worked for Bethesda Gaming, I believe is the company, and that he was working on a really, really major project in Boston and was not allowed to leave the Boston city limits, and also could not have anyone come visit him within the Boston city limits. And he hadn't seen Gio in a long time. And obviously that's the most believable story in the entire world. And I wished I had thought of something that simple to get out of the situation. But I'm like, who would believe that? Like, there's no way that, well, can you imagine your employer just says, like, not only can you not leave this city because you are a video game developer, but no one can even come visit you here because we're so worried about things. What is he, a spy? Like, I mean, it's crazy. I could see high up military people or something, but like not video games. Like, I can't even believe they believe that. Did Panda, Fiasco, Denny all leave because they knew something was up? Everyone seemed to leave around the same time. Panda was still there when I left. I know Denny was generally unhappy just because I think it become too much of a sales job. Whereas I think she signed on to be a writer, and it really became, hey, sell my magic candles and sell this, write up this advertisement, more so than like Disney. And so I think that was part of what happened there. And then Fiasco, I mean, Pete got rid of Fiasco, so he didn't leave on his own accord anyway. And that was really more of like Fiasco, I don't think was being his buddy enough, more so than anything. And I think that the audience didn't really take the Fiasco until Fiasco was gone. So that was part of it too, I know when Fiasco left, it wasn't like there was this, crying or anything from the audience. Spill the tea about what Pete allegedly spent the money on. People have been making some guesses up above, actually, so you have to go back in the comments there. How many people do you think knowingly enabled Pete, knowing who he was? Why do you think they did so? I don't know how many people. I don't think people enabled Pete in the sense of like being abusive and knowing the full extent of things. I think it's just everyone was kind of in quicksand, and it's like spiraling, and there's just people deeper than you, and everyone's just trying to like not get sucked into the center of it. So that's the best way I could describe it. And I don't know why they did so. I don't know how it got to that point, because even I can look back and I'm like, I'm stupid sometimes, but like I'm usually on the up and up with my surroundings and knowing how to read a room. And I saw signs, but I still kept pressing forward. And maybe like I'm a pathological people pleaser or something, but there was part of me that was like, I'm trying to do a good job. And this man is telling me, you're not good enough. You're terrible. You're awful at every single thing. And it was more motivating. Like, okay, well, I'm going to prove it. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to show myself. And because I've never been challenged in that way, because I'm usually good at stuff when I'm trying to do it. But I realize now I'm like, I was trying to prove myself to somebody that I don't respect and never really respected. So what was that about? Like there was no reason to. Did you know anything about the hidden cameras Charles mentioned? I do not. That is like the weirdest thing. And it's so weird because all this is coming out. That's the most shocking thing of the whole Megillah or whatever you'd say. What's that about? Like, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. Like that's pretty much the end of that sentence. Why would anyone do this? Like, was it happening during Christmas parties? Like when people had kids over? Was it a one-off? Was he filming like guys in the shower? I mean, I could see it I mean, not like I agree, but like I could see it being factual to a degree because Charles wasn't the only guy that was like a recovering person in AA that was homeless or needed somewhere to stay that Pete took in. He was somewhat of a halfway house to a degree. And I mean, there were other non-Diz people that were living there at times. So this was not, so I'm like, maybe it was part of that, or maybe it was just something that happened years ago and he told Charles that it would happen. I'm not really sure there, but that was weird. That was not something I would do. Maybe the 25 employees were actually family members on the PPP loans. Yeah. So wouldn't, yeah. Yep. So we'll see. You look really good, Sean. And honestly, you did not seem comfortable on the vlogs when you had to be with him. Yep, I agree with that too. So, Canada people are the most awesome. Wait, what happened? I was wearing a Canada hat earlier and I realized I just switched it out. So I thought you were referencing my hat. Sorry. I now realize I'm not wearing it anymore. It was the one that I got at the Epcot Pavilion at the World Showcase. Let's see. Best condo communities to buy for short-term rental investment. I don't know offhand. The condos don't do. Actually, Oakwater is one that I would say is probably the best. It's really close to Disney, so I would say Oakwater. What is Charles up to? God if I know. So apparently he's freelance riding around. Let's see. I'm sorry, it jumped, so now I got to scroll back up. Wow, how far behind did I get? Okay, what's Charles up to? No idea, don't care. All of us experience hardships. Hope you find peace and healing. Oh, thank you. Look so much happier. Are you still in contact with him from the Diz? The truth is the truth, period. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to like leave downtime. I hate when that happens on lives. You said Pete threatened employees. Can you elaborate on what kinds of threats he made? It was always that you'd lose your job or lose your perks of some kind. So it was always be my friend or else you're fired, essentially. And it's obviously it's not that cut and dry, but it's one of those things where, oh, hey, random that I'm targeting today, like there's a dog here, sorry. Hey, random person, whoever I've chosen, fiasco, stay behind today after we're done filming. Like, I want to talk to you. And then it's like, hey, you got to sit in my office and then you're going to watch me smoke. And then it's like, he gets in and he's like, oh, and he's got to decompress. And then he's got to be like, oh, so what'd you think about today's shows? And what'd you think about this and all that? And then it's like, hey, I'm going to order some DoorDash. Like, what do you want? Like, here's the thing. And it's like, oh, well, I actually have to go. Like I have other stuff going on after work as a thing. And it's like, oh, okay. Then you leave, then you get a text message a couple hours later. Wow, after all I do for you, it's really sad that like you're so disrespectful and you're so terrible of a person and all that. I'll keep that in mind next time I'm thinking about who's getting cut around here and who's doing this. So it scares you into wanting to stay, wanting to make sure he's happy. So you really are just hoping you're not the target is essentially it. And you are the target until someone new becomes the target. And it could be for any random reason. So that's ultimately the goal. When I was there, I attempted to make myself the target as much as possible to keep Pete off other people's back. And that was the goal. But most of the time it happened. But sometimes Pete would get on this trail. Like he was on Rhino for like a year and a half, and was just like Rhino, 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 like super mad at him. Rhino was always on the bubble of Pete losing it and just firing him. And I'd be like, Pete, you need to calm down. You need to calm down. And then finally I just had enough. And I was like, you know what? Fire him. Like fire him, destroy him as a thing. And then Pete was like, whoa, buddy, like you're going too far with this. And then lightning rod came back on me. Rhino was safe. So then I learned, I'm like, great, plan worked. Like, and now if I go crazier than he does, he thinks I look like a lunatic and he just swerves back the opposite direction. So it became that was the plan, and it worked pretty well. I've been watching The Diz Unplugged since the beginning. The show got stale because they stopped being structured. That is very true. So they were very unstructured. Thousands of people as a question mark. I don't know what that refers to. Please ignore every bit of that message. Okay, so we've gotten to this point. Okay. The thousands of people that's lives were ruined. Yeah, I don't know. There's only 60 something agents, so I don't know what that was about, but I was like, well, that's nothing I would write to anyone, even if I didn't like them. So did John or Corey ever try to tell Pete not to be a jerk to his employees? I don't know about John. I know Corey did many times. I mean, Corey was the closest to being in a position that I was where he could be more candid with Pete. But I mean, Pete don't listen. Like he will for that second when you say like, Pete, like you overstepped, you went too far. Like maybe you should calm down. He's like, yeah, I know. Like I've got to be better about that kind of stuff and all that. But it's in one ear and out the other. It's gone in seconds. So it's not, you can't really do much with that. It did sound like Pete wrote that message from earlier. When I read it, I was like, oh my God, this sounds just like something Pete would have sent me. So, which I'm completely numb to at this point. So if he wanted it to affect my life, he should have gotten more creative. You should feel proud for staying up. Thank you. Don't listen to negativity. They are not related to Pete. No, they are not. Absolutely not. What do you think Pete is doing now? I'm assuming sitting at home. I guess he's sitting at the house. That's the only thing I could think. Maybe he went back to New Jersey. I could see that. Like if he just wanted to get away and go up there for a while. So yeah. I like Sean's takes, but he did look a bit lost sometimes when Pete would talk. Will ask him something, and Sean was like, I never did that. Oh yeah, no, there were so many things at Disney. Even when I came on the show, like when I came on board with the company, there really was no role for me because Pete does this thing. He loves to like throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, is the quote, which I have never heard in my life. But that is kind of the policy there. So he hires people and then says, we will find you a job. So, but there was no job. And eventually he was like, I just want you to go on camera. And I'm like, I don't want to go on camera because y'all talk about things that I don't know what you're talking about and experiences that I haven't done. But Pete was kind of like, I just have enough control over the show that I can do what I want, essentially, which he did. It was just, I had to leave with that feeling of I'm not, it sucks to sit there and be unknowledgeable about something when you're being directly asked and you're supposed to be an expert on the situation. The date on the water heater. Oh yeah, definitely checking dates on water heaters is a good idea if you're going to an open house. Do you think the issue is that the agents don't have the complete picture of recent events and they think you're just stirring up trouble? I could see that being a situation that the agents may think I'm just trying to start drama. From their perspective, I was brought in to be an agent 2018. Yeah, 2018. Like I'd said, there really was no real role for me in the company. And Pete and John had went around to most of the agents and said, would y'all want to start going on camera? Would y'all want, the ones who live in Florida, would you want to come to the parks more? Because it was important that an agent get on the show consistently. And they all said no, like pretty much. Like Elaine, I guess, goes on shows now. A couple of them had said, yeah, I'll do them when I'm in town. But eventually it became a thing where let's look internal. And I was like, well, I'm not doing anything here. So I'll be an agent and I'll be on camera and go in. So I knew some agents didn't love that. And they felt like I kind of got a leg up on everyone else. And it especially became a point of contention when commissions got doled out. And This is a big one that was an early point I brought up on Tattle, but I'll mention it here just because so many people are new to even the Tattle situation. So with dreams, the way commission splits work, and so let's say Jordan Mara, who's I'm reading just random names. So let's say Jordan Mara, years ago in 2008, booked with Dreams Unlimited Travel, found them online, and was randomly assigned agent Allison. So he gives with Allison, books the trip, never comes back. And then starts watching the Diz on screen. All this happens. 2018 rolls around. I start going on camera, and he comes in and says, "Oh, I saw Sean on the show. I want to directly work with Sean." And that happened a lot where people are like, "That's a face I'm familiar with, so that's who I want to work with." And I want to work with him. I would have to work with that client, but Allison gets paid because they view it as Allison brought the customer in. So because she booked the client 10 years ago, she gets all the commission. So I work the client, and then once I get them booked, I can transfer them to her, but the trip is already booked. So she would just have to maintain the trip at that point. But these people were like, "Hey, I want to work with Sean not with someone else. I wanted to work specifically with him." So they would have to write in a request to John Magi, like the owner, and say, "I do not want to go back to the other person. I want to work with Sean," consistently throughout the whole process. Well, then this other person who's saying, "Hey, no, 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 that's my client because I helped them 10 years ago and never talked to them again, and I want my commission," they're mad at me because this client now is from them. So I definitely got a lot of pushback from agents that didn't care for me and the way things were happening. But I'm also like, I mean, that's not my fault that like people wanted to work with me. Do you think people issue a statement or we will ever hear from him again? I think eventually there'll be a statement just because I think he'll have to like work through his psyche of whatever his methods are AA wise and whatever he ends up doing. So I think someday there will be a statement. Um, he hasn't put out any negates at this point, as far as I know. And I mean, he seems to have left quietly out of at least the hosting role and the president role of the company. And I mean, he voluntarily, seemingly, has been the one to remove his own Twitter accounts and that kind of stuff. So he certainly hasn't, he certainly hasn't made any statements yet, and he hasn't contradicted anything that's been said yet. So we'll see how it goes. Let's see. I will ask him to post part 4. I don't think he ever we're talking about Dustin is posting on Tattle parts 1 through 4 of his story of what happened. He got to 3 and then nothing happened. So I'll ask him what happened with 4 because I don't think he ever posted it actually. So we will see. I understand why. Do you foresee any criminal charges coming for Pete? No, not from us. So no. I'll say no. Did he assault you physically or just mentally? There was only one incident of him doing something physical, and it was at Disneyland. And so we went to Disneyland, and we were leaving like that morning. We were leaving to fly back home to Orlando, and we were in our hotel room, and you know how like there's like double beds, like I got the king bed here, but there'd be 2 queens lined up, and then there's the door behind me. So Pete was mad at me. He wasn't talking to me, and I was like, "Listen, Pete, we got a long way home. Please just talk to me." He was very upset because my mom was actually on that trip. He was very angry with me because the night before we were walking through the park as it was closing, and for some reason they started playing a LeAnn Rimes song. And I said, "This is weird. Why are they playing a song by LeAnn Rimes at Disneyland?" And my mom said the same thing. And she's like, "I thought that's who that was." And as far as I know, it wasn't even a Disney song. So it was like, this is so strange that they're doing this. Well, Pete, I guess, couldn't be part of that conversation, and he lost it when we got back to the hotel. And I was like, "I cannot believe you were just talking. You didn't want to involve me in the conversations. You just wanted to talk about LeAnn Rimes." And like, I don't know anything about LeAnn Rimes. Like, I just knew it was her singing that song. That's it. So like, I was not trying to make a whole story about LeAnn Rimes happen. I'm sorry you felt left out. I really am. And he still was mad at me the next day. So I just was standing in front of the door and I was like, Pete, let's just talk about this. And he was reaching around me to try to open the door and get out. And I was like, Pete, can you just stop? And then he started flipping out, saying that I was kidnapping him. And he was like yelling at me and accusing me and saying I'm kidnapping him. And he was going to call the police. He's like, I'm calling the police because you're kidnapping me. And I was like, go ahead and call the police. And then they're going to get here and they're going to see you. And then they're going to know I'm not kidnapping you because you're a grown man and he's portly. And I was too at that point or whatever. And I was like, I don't think anyone's going to see us and be like, wow, so one of them's kidnapping me. Like I'm kidnapping him. So he ended up like charging at me and I kind of braced because I thought it was gonna like knock me back or something, but he actually just bounced off. So like nothing happened. He bounced off and he hit the corner of the bed, which flipped him over the bed into that like middle section between the queen size beds. And then he got up and was like, not only are you kidnapping me, you beat me as a thing. I was like, I didn't beat you. You literally charged at me from like the other side. Like you literally tried to slam me and body check me. And like you just sucked at it. So like I mean that's not on me, that's on you, like as a thing. So so finally I was like, listen, we'll call the cops, let's just do it. Police get called, the hotel manager calls us and is like, listen, the police called us, said that there's like a dispute happening here. And I was like, can we just go? Because Pete was like, I'm gonna have you thrown in jail. And I was like, okay, like I'll have you thrown in jail and then we'll see what happens. Like we'll just throw each other in jail, I guess. So Pete was like, no, forget it, we'll just leave. And that was that. So that was the only physical altercation. Like sexual is a whole other story, but like physically that was the only hitting. They let's see, PTSD is real. Yeah, apparently it is. I always wondered like how people get in that cycle of things, but yeah, mine has been very strange with PTSD. I'm weird now about situations I can't get out of. Like I'm weird about flying. I will find myself weird in elevators. Like it'll be right before I get on. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I don't want to get in an elevator. Like I'm and I'll leave and I'll go take the stairs. So for some reason, I've got this little block there about not putting myself in spots that I can't leave. Even this last cruise that I took, I had a moment the first night where I was like, oh my God, like I'm so glad we're just sitting at a port all day tomorrow because I don't want to be here right now. What is the worst thing Pete ever said to someone that you were around to hear? Was it you? Probably to me. There's still horrible things that I've heard him say to other people and about other people that I won't even say because it would just hurt their feelings. I mean, Pete, he would like call me and just moo into the phone and then hang up. And then, or he would call because I'd gained so much weight. So he would call and either moo into the phone and hang up, or he would call and be like, yell like stretch marks into the phone because like my stomach got stretch marks. So like, so he would yell that and like little weird thing. Like, I'm like, this is crazy. This is like so childish of a thing. But he would always call me Jethro. Like that was a big one. So that was probably the bulk of it. So was Pete's mom nice? Yeah, she is really nice. Does she know how rotten her son is? I don't want to. I don't know. However, I think so, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't think she knows to the full extent. I really don't. But like, I mean, I think she's a smart lady. The agent's anger is misplaced. Yup. How do we follow your real estate videos? I will have to get back to you on that one because things are at the very end stages of getting settled and most likely dissolved with moving to Orlando, but we just got to see what happens with the assets there and how exactly that shakes out. Wow, how obnoxious was it when he would talk about how close he and Josh Tomorrow were? So I did meet Josh Tomorrow, I want to say twice, and Josh was a really nice guy. I don't think they were that close. I mean, I definitely don't think they were as close as what he was saying that they were. I mean, we met. I mean, I know Pete met him a couple of more times than I did, but I mean, I don't think they were like super buddy or anything. So it was just, I mean, anything with that stuff with the knowing people at Disney and knowing high ups and knowing how to get into places and all this stuff, I thought came off pretty obnoxious just because You can't do that stuff in my view and then turn around and be like, hey audience, like if you want to keep us, if you like what we're doing, then you got to use my travel agency and you got to buy my candles and you got to buy my stuff and you got to support us on Patreon because we can't afford to do nothing. And then you go post $5,000 shot videos when you don't even drink alcohol and bragging about tipping was a big one. Like he would tip, and he's a great tipper, treats the staff like crap, but like he's a great tipper, but he always has to tell you how much he's tipping. And it's weird. Like he'll say, oh, have you heard this 100% tip thing that's gone viral? And I'm like, no, Pete, I haven't. What's that? Oh, it's where you tip the server 100% of the ticket. And I did that. And I'm like, there you go. You sure did. Like it's excessive and that's great, but you also kind of treated them like garbage the entire time we were at the restaurant. So that was a tough one for me because I was a waiter for a long time. And I was like, I don't know why you're mad at them. Sorry, my nose. But yeah, I was like, I don't know why you're so upset with them about something they didn't know. Like they didn't know you're a recovering alcoholic and you ordered an orange cello cheesecake and they didn't warn you that it had alcohol in it. Like they don't know you're a recovering alcoholic. So do you have any thoughts or hopes on the future of the Diz? Do you think they can recover? I talked about that a bit earlier in the video, so I won't go back over that one. What about the cameras in Pete's bathroom and the $450,000 house? I don't know about the cameras in the bathrooms. That y'all heard about that at the same time I did, so I didn't know that. Are you in contact with Fiasco? Fiasco did reach out and said like, hey, he's really sorry that all that happened. He didn't know, which I knew he didn't know, but he did reach out. So he's messaged several times on Instagram Messenger. And yeah, I mean, Fiasco's a really nice person. I think he's just, you're either you like his personality or you don't like his personality. That's it. But he's a nice person overall. So that's the easiest thing to say. A tender soul is a good wording for that. Now that you have a fear of flying, will you still go to Alani in the future? I will. I actually am going to Asia in 3 weeks for my honeymoon because that was just when the dates made sense for me to go. So it is an 18-hour flight and I am very much dreading it. So I will be very excited once I get there. And actually, I'm sorry if it gets loud because the Magic Kingdom fireworks are going off right now. And I'm kind of in front of I have a bay window that looks at the back of the park. So they might get a little loud. How long did you date Pete? I don't know. He just kind of picked I really, literally, it was that. Like he literally looked at me one day and was just like, oh, so now that we're dating. And I was like, when did that happen? I had no idea that we were dating. And he would just kind of like end things. And then I'm like, okay, like that's over. And then he would just be like, hey, I think we're back together again as a thing. And I'm like, well, I don't, but guess who's about to lose their job? So, because I would try several times and be like, hey, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to. And it's like, oh, well, then that, here we go. And here comes the threats. So, yep. So I don't even have an answer to that. Let's see. What's Pete's next move, Sean? He's been so quiet. Has he tried to contact you? No, he has not. He's not tried to contact. And I don't know what his next move is. I think I move to New Jersey, maybe. Let's see. Narcissists always believe their own lies. I was raised by one. Pete fits the mold. Yep. Yep. Let's see. Did Rhino and Craig like Pete? I can't. Well, no one likes Pete. They really don't. Like, okay, I'm not going to answer that question, but I will tell a fun Rhino and Craig story. So, the Gift Kids the World auctions. There was one year, a couple years ago, when Rhino and Craig did some kind of like drink with Rhino and Craig at like Baseline Tap House or Hollywood Studios somewhere as a thing. And Pete had done go to dinner with him or go to a Cher concert. I can't remember exactly which one it was. And Pete thought he overheard Rhino and Craig talking in the studio one day and saying to each other, oh, we we hope we beat Pete, because I guess in the bidding it was pretty close and they were a higher auction price than Pete was at that time. And Pete felt like they were purposefully trying to do it and that they were talking and like wanting to bring Kylie in to like lock in that they would win over him. And so Pete came to me. He was furious. He was like, I cannot believe they said this stuff to me. I can't believe, or about me behind my back in my own house. And they thought that. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to show them, because if they're bringing on Kylie to go with Rhino and Craig to go drink, I'm going to bring on you to come to dinner. And I was like, Pete, number one, you're delusional if you think I'm driving up the price of going to that dinner with you compared to going to drink with Craig, Rhino, and Kylie. I would say, if you want to do something, bring your mom. Like, or like people might bid more then. But I had talked to Rhino and Craig, and I know they were very stressed out because they were like, we obviously did not say that. We're not stupid and would have never said that, especially in Pete's house. But we don't want to beat Pete because we know Pete will be angry if our thing gets more than him. And I'm like, well, then you should have done a cookie stroll or Figment for 2 hours or something that like people didn't want to go do. So that's by comparison, to going to drink. But that's the choice they made. So that was that. Who is suing Pete? At this time, American Express 3 times. So I know Pete is wondering why Craig would not invite him over to his house. I don't know. Let's see. I know you're good friends with Ruben. So how has your not wanting to sell houses for the business because it would benefit Pete caused any strain in your relationship? That's a good. It has. That's a good question on that. It is so brave that you speak out and tell the truth. Thank you. Let's see. Was there? Oh yeah. There was a Golden Oak client. But the question was there a Golden Oak client Pete messed up? Yes, there was. It was so infuriating. Like, because obviously Golden Oak is a pinnacle for a real estate thing that's trying to sell Disney product here or get people to move close to Disney. So if we could sell a Golden Oak house, that's great. So these fans of the show, both are from the Northeast, a husband, wife, and they were down and they had about 4 hours of a block of time and they wanted to see Golden Oak, and their budget was 3 to 4 million ish. And they were going to be able to get one of the cottages that was there. Pete wanted the client. They did want to work with Pete. So I was like, listen, I need to help, like 100%. You don't know what you're doing. I need help. So we show up to Golden Oak the morning or the afternoon of, and they just had probably a 3 or 4 hour block of time. I have had other clients interested in Golden Oak, but I always have backup houses ready because I do know technically for the money, your money can stretch further somewhere else. Inevitably, they're going to ask, well, can I see something else in the area? So I want to have houses ready that like, hey, your $3 million budget can actually, a mile down the road can be a $1.5 million budget and get you a bigger home. So, and usually they end up going that route because they're still so close to the park. And actually this one community called Royal Cypress Preserve backs up to the Four Seasons property. So it's literally right there as a thing. So you're pretty much in the same place, but you're not getting those perks and the prestige of it. So we get to the guest center and we're showing all the stuff, and Pete walks in because he's never been in there. And Pete walks in and he is just like oohing and awing over everything. And like, there's our clients, there's the stuff. He's like, oh my God. And this is amazing. This is just like an office space. Like this isn't we're not even in. And he's just oohing and awing over things. And I'm like, I put him aside and I said, Pete, like, can you please act like you've been here before? Like, I know you haven't, but can you at least act a little more put on or something? And he was upset. He was like, no, what are you talking about? But can you just imagine, like, you're going to court and like you go in with your attorney and you walk in and your attorney's like, oh my God, it's real. It's so bigger than life. Look at the judge. Look at that little jury over there. That's so cool. Like, as a thing, you're not going to feel good if that person's the one defending you. So, because they clearly aren't doing this very often. So that happened. Then we go out to like go in, and Pete's like, the agent said, oh, do you guys want to compile cars so we don't have like so many cars going into Golden Oak? So Pete said, yeah, I want them to ride with me. And I was like, well, like, I just had my car detailed and all that. So like, they could always ride with me and they may have questions and stuff if we want to compile that way. Pete didn't want to do that. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll ride in my car by myself behind y'all and answer questions, or the other agent can answer questions as we go. Second, I see them get in the car. First thing he does, light up a cigarette. I would have been out. Like, nothing against like people who smoke as a thing, but if I got in a car with my real estate agent and they immediately just light up a cigarette without even asking me, like, is this something they're okay with? So I was like, oh my God, like there's another little strike against it. And so we do the tour, we see the house. They really like the house. And of course, they look at me and they say, hey, what other options can you show us? We've got about 2 more hours. What else can we see? And I was like, surprise, like I've got other houses planned. So like, let's go back to my car and we can do that. And Pete was like, no, like I don't want to do that. I want to treat you guys to lunch. And I was like, well, Pete, like they have a very limited amount of time. And they were like, oh yeah, and we would like to see these other houses. And Pete's like, oh no, 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 no. Like I want to take you to lunch. So instead of taking them to see other multi-million dollar houses, we had to go to the Four Seasons and eat at the pool bar. And us and the family sat at the pool bar, and they actually weren't hungry at all. So they sat and they split a meal. I got like a salad, and Pete got a 3-course meal. Like he literally got full appetizer, entree, dessert. Like we were doing a dining review. And he kept leaving to go smoke. The people were just sitting there like really uncomfortably. And then I was like, Pete, can we go? Can we go? Can we go? I need to show these people more houses. And then we get back to the cars and they're like, hey, we don't have time anymore, but maybe someday in the future we will, and all that. And I told Pete, I was like, they're never contacting us again. We're done. Like we're done with that sale. And he got really mad at me. He's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything wrong. And I was like, well, you didn't do anything right, but whatever. We did lose the clients. They did not end up buying anything with us. So it was very, very frustrating. And I have no idea why he chose to do that. From the shows I've seen, Pete has 250K watch collection. He does have a big watch collection, actually. Where do you think Pete is right now? No idea. I remember Pete would defend you when someone criticized you. Is Pete just putting up a front, trying to make himself look like a good guy? I don't think Pete was trying to put up a front. I do think that he was trying to defend me genuinely. And I just don't, I think, but I thought it's a reflection on his company too, that people are like, I think he was shocked because it's like this person that I've told you I like and recommend, you're not warming up to immediately. So I do think his feelings on that were genuine, but Pete, he doesn't know how to love. Like it really is, that's really the best way to describe it, is like he thinks anything is love. Like if he loves you, then you love him back. And a good example of that would be, he and I got into it at one point because he was very upset that a friend of his did not come to his Thanksgiving party. And he'd invited the friend, and the friend, she didn't come. And I said, I've never heard of this person. I don't remember her name, but let's call her Mary. He was like, I can't believe Mary didn't come. Mary didn't show up to my party. And I was like, well, why would Mary come to the party? Like, and I said, who's Mary, first of all? And because I don't know Mary, I've been around you for years and you ain't ever mentioned a friend named Mary. And he was like, you know Mary. She's my friend at Publix, that every time you've met her so many times. Every time we go into Publix, she's cooking over in the corner and she gives me a recipe. And she's like, Pete, I thought of you when I was cooking this recipe. And I was like, the sample lady at Publix, like who like gives recipes out? Like, this is the woman you're mad didn't come to your Thanksgiving party? Like, I'm sure she was with her family. Like, what do you mean? Like, why would you ever? And I said, Pete, that woman's not your friend. Like, she works there. That's it. And she's like, he got mad at me and was like, oh, you don't understand. You don't understand friendship and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, like that, you don't understand friendship. Like that's not your friend. The sample person at Costco is not your friend. The gas station attendant that you frequent is not your friend. Like that's just not the way it works. So I think he just doesn't understand like friendship and love. I think it's just not in his wheelhouse. Okay. Earlier in the video, you said we're not Canada people or we're not Canada people or Mexico people. I gotcha. I saw the verse one you were wearing on the cruise. Oh yeah, my verse shirt is a favorite of mine. Yeah, be my friend or else is pretty much that's the moniker. I don't want to jinx it, but your public speaking is exponentially better. No filler words. Not sure if you've worked on removing filler words or it's just being under so much stress and anxiety. I think it's gotten better, but I also know about the material topic at this point. So I don't have to be thinking in my head now about what I'm going to say because I can just answer with an actual opinion because I've done it. I lived it. Does this pay well? Oh, can you tell us more about the meeting with Josh tomorrow? I the only time I've met with him that specifically remember the other time was just in passing. I had met with him after the hoop-de-doo incident, which that the hoop-de-doo story happened and the way I said it happened, and so but we I did meet with him after, and it went really well. Pete did get upset with me because Josh tomorrow asked if I had worked at the parks and all that stuff. And I said, I did work at the parks in 2013. And he asked how I liked it. I let him know that it was the absolute worst job I'd ever had. It was the lowest paying job I'd ever had, and that I wouldn't work there again for anything. And Pete was very upset that I was candid with him and told him that. And we had a long discussion about the break rooms and about a lot of things like that. I don't think I necessarily had anything to do with that because I'm sure there's a lot of hurdles. But a few weeks later, I think it was going into 2020 was when that happened. There was a big announcement that they had set aside like $8 million to do break rooms or something. And then COVID hit. So I think that derailed that. But he was aware of it at least. And he was happy that I was candid. Did the DIS pay well or give pay raises? No. The DIS does not pay well. And from what I was told, at that, I don't think there's people who've worked there 20 years that I'm at a pay raise. So as far as their base pay goes, so they're making average 35,000 a year is pretty much the baseline. Most things are done with perks. Like, okay, if you're my YouTube guy, you're getting some of that money. If you're my ads guy, you're getting some of that money. So that's kind of where it came into play. So, but I would say average 35 to 40,000 base pay, but I don't 100% know that. So we'll say allegedly. Do you think Ryan and Craig had any inkling about Pete's behavior? I mean, certainly not sexual or being so abusive. I think everything was always presented as a consensual relationship to them and to everyone. And I wasn't going to mess with anybody's stuff. So but no, they didn't know anything like that. So they know he sucked, but but there's plenty of times you don't like your boss or like your boss can be overbearing, but that doesn't mean they're like a rapist. So is Craig the type of person who would suck up to a person like Pete? No. Craig's definitely one that's willing to sit down and try to have a conversation with Pete. I think he just knows Pete's not going to listen. So there's really no point. Where did Drake go? I like Drake's gone, so I would talk about it at another point just because this is already over an hour. I'm not a Drake fan in any way, so Drake was absolutely just not a person that I ever want to have to deal with again for the rest of my life. He's not a mean person. He's a whole thing I don't like. Are you hopeful that Corey can initiate change? Yes, I am hopeful in that. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Why do you think Denny left? I had answered that a bit earlier, but I think it was just the job. Like you had to be like, as I was just saying, your base pay is this, and then you got to start selling stuff on top of it to get a real payday out of it. And I think that just wasn't what she signed up for. Hey, Sean, was there a crazy story about Pete losing his cell phone at Animal Kingdom Diz party? Looked like high drama. I don't remember that. So if that happened while I was there, I blocked it out of my memory. But I do remember that party. It was the Pandora party. So, and I would have been with him all night. So I'm surprised I don't remember that. Do you think Disney will continue to let Pete go on their cruise ships after the allegations? I mean, yeah. Like, I mean, if he pays, I think they'll still let him go on the cruise. I don't think they'll ban him from going on the ships. I'm sorry, I'm not responding to like each like thank you thing. It's just I know people are going to watch this later, and I want to keep it moving with that. But I am reading it, and I do thank everybody. Does anyone know how his mom is doing? I don't know actually. I have not heard anything about his mom in several years, so I'm not sure. What's happening with her? Uh, Sorry that it jumped up. Why wasn't this filmed? I think this is being filmed. Is it not? Maybe it's not. Um, I did it with the intention of filming it. That's what I thought was happening. Did Pete get mad with you in London when you just had a normal conversation with an American family? Pete got mad at me in London when I had a conversation with British families. So any family, like there is no family that I could have had a conversation with that like Pete wouldn't have been angry with me about. He was mad at me that whole trip. If you had been on that trip, that ABD, there were so many times I would have to pull Pete to the side and John and Kevin too. I even talked to them about it, where I was like, listen, these people paid $13,000 per person to come on this trip with y'all. Like, not me. Like, there's only the four of us here from the Diz. They want you three. So you're not participating. You're not going to things because they've done those ABDs so many times that they're like, oh, I don't want to do Windsor Castle. I don't want to do Versailles. I don't want to do those things. And I'm like, listen, that's fine. If you don't want to do it on your ABDs that you paid for, but these people paid for your ABDs. They were free. Like most of the ABDs they go on, they go for free. Because if you book a block, like how you book a block of rooms on a cruise or whatever, if you book a block of rooms on an ABD or a block of spots, you get free spots for those things happening. So if you sell, let's say 8 spots on there, you get a free spot. And then you sell another 8, you get another free spot. Or how, I don't know the exact numbers, but that's how that works. I'm like, the 4 of us came here for free. So all these other people paid 13 grand each, and you're not spending any time with them. And you're acting like you hate them. So it was wild. And that was the only time I ever did like a Diz ABD before. And so I was like, woof, if I had come here as a person who paid that money with y'all, I would not come back again. I can tell you that much. Wait, he'd moo. Yes, he would moo at me. So, yes, he would absolutely moo at me. Do you know why Sean Thompson left? I have no idea who Sean Thompson is. He keeps coming up in things, and I do not know him. So I don't. Do you think Disney will drop Dreams Unlimited as one of their preferred travel agencies? Dreams isn't a preferred travel agency. They're a diamond agency. So it's just that they sell over a certain threshold per year. So it's not, they get some perks for their agents, which is like credits that they can use towards things because they sell at such a high volume to like get their agents in the park for free for like familiarization trips and stuff. So I don't see them getting rid of that for Dreams or anything. They're not going to blacklist them or whatever. That I don't see that. Does Pete have enough money to get through the lawsuit and live the life he has been used to in retirement? Pete didn't have the money to sell the company before because he was trying to sell the company back in 2019. And I sat him down and was very candid with him. And I said, Pete, if you sell this, he was like, I could sell my share for $5 or $6 million. I was like, Pete, if you had $5 or $6 million, you would be broke in 3 years. Like you would be broke. You'd have absolutely nothing. So you literally cannot afford to retire. You can't afford to sell it. You can't. And so now at this point, even if he does sell, he can't afford to live on that money. He's not going to be able to do that. So I don't think for a minute that will happen. Is his house nice? The way he talks about it, you would think it is a mansion. It's not bad. I mean, it's not bad. Like, I'm not going to like knock his house, or he definitely could technically, with the money he's made over the years, afford a bigger, nicer house or something. But it's not a bad house. It's just not. It's not at the house you'd expect someone of his, opulence to be in. How did Pete react off camera to your ABD donation to Give Kids the World? Pissed. Absolutely pissed was what he was. So years before, when I first came on, 2 things happened. I suggested that Dreams auction off a cruise for Give Kids the World, and I was given a flat out no that would never happen. And guess what? It came up and they started doing it. So, which I'm not saying they didn't before, which I don't, because I really don't think they did before. I really thought I was the one that suggested that. Second thing, one time we worked with we were working with Give Kids the World to auction off a night in the Cinderella suite in Cinderella Castle. And I'd said that I thought the Omays auctioning way of doing it where people just give like $1 and it becomes a raffle thing was a way better route to go than just having the highest bidder get it. And it also opened it up to more people being able to do that. And they laughed in my face. Literally, we sat in Pete's living room and did a circle, and they asked me how much money that I thought that would generate as a thing for Give Kids the World. And I said, I don't know, like 50 grand plus. And they hysterically laughed. I don't exactly know what number it ended up being, but it was well over what I said. So it was the better way to go. But anyway, so years later come by, and I decide, since the real estate thing is doing so well, to donate an Adventures by Disney trip. And it was, oh, you stole that from Dreams. Dreams does cruises. You're trying to one up Dreams. You're trying to one up us. Pete wanted his name on the donation. And I'm like, I'm not putting your name on the donation because I'm the one paying it. Number one, it's my tax write-off as well, but I'm not putting it on there for you to just take all the credit for this thing that you didn't want to be a part of. So he was very upset. He had promised during that he would actually book it because Dreams sells so much ABD, they get 16% commission on it. That Pete said that he would book it and he would refund me back the 16% because it was coming out of my pocket. Obviously, once it happened, he did not book it. I did not get my 16% back. And I ended up having to pay taxes on the entire bill for the ABD. So that was a fun $10,000 that I was out there. But I was very happy that it went off well and that it happened as a thing. So, but it was a lot of behind the scenes drama with that ABD. Pete did not take it well. Did he hold what happened at Hoop-Dee-Doo with you and your family over your head? No, he didn't actually. He was actually pretty supportive in that. Because he knew I wasn't going to get confrontational and I'm not like a messy drunk that's going to get in a fight for no reason. So he did step in there. We love Magic Candle Company, but Pete's part owner or has his hands in it. We'll have to stop buying from them. Pete does not own Magic Candle Company at all. He just has a discount code where if you use his code, you can get a discount and he gets some of the money. So I'm sure there's plenty of other people. Actually, I think Fiasco individually has a Magic Candle code. Fiasco had his own channel before he joined the Diz. And Pete asked him like how he was generating money. And one of the ways was Fiasco told him, he's like, oh, I work with this company called Magic Candle Company and I help advertise their candles on my channel. And I have a discount code. So when people buy from me, I get some of the commission off of it. Pete immediately contacted Magic Candle Company, got a code, started doing the same thing. So that was all Fiasco, and Fiasco might actually have a code himself where if you're buying and you want to help him, then I'm sure he would appreciate that. Sorry, my jaw just popped. What were the marathon shows like behind the scenes? I'm sure it must have been so hard for everyone. I just kind of showed up. Like I really wasn't part of the planning process on marathon shows. They were they were the least thrown together thing. That is the main thing I would say. A lot of stuff was pre-recorded. So there was a lot of gaps where we could just put stuff up. I know the most shocking thing for me was that Pete absolutely hates the movie White Christmas, and that should have been my big red flag because I love White Christmas and can't imagine someone hating the joy of White Christmas. Is there any particular outcome you hope for in regarding your Pete chapter? No, like I want to be able to look back on it and see it as like a funny memory where it's like, remember that crazy guy? Like that was weird. What was that about? And then I just don't have this looming like thing over me. That's pretty much it at this point. Let's see. Sorry, I got in late here. Will you post the live stream? Yes, I will post the live stream after. Do you know how Pete's mother's doing? I don't. I haven't heard from Pete in years, or I haven't heard from his mother in years. Why was Pete particularly hard on Rhino? I think because Rhino was getting very popular, and the other was, I guess, Rhino was making his political views very clear on Twitter, and Pete didn't like that either, and which Pete didn't like for his brand, but a lot of it was that Rhino was becoming a very popular figure on the show. I know people have been less inclined with him since COVID, but before that, I mean, Rhino, I would say pretty much argued popularity with Pete. They had a different audience, but they were getting pretty close to the same level as people kind of got tired of Pete shenanigans and really were enjoying Rhino. Um, uh, there you go, Dina. I think he loves hard on Rhino because the viewers liked Rhino, and I agree with that. I remember Pete mentioning my name. I know he was talking about me. Marissa Valaton said, I can't believe your audience is pretty knowledgeable about the timeshare process. Pete looked right at the camera and said, that person makes me angry. Maybe not the exact words, something along those lines. Well, that sucks. I'm sorry he did that. That sucks. What is Pete's cigarette brand of choice? Marlboro Menthol. They're green. I'm pretty sure it's, yeah. I think it's Marlboro Menthol, if I remember. Um, I don't know. I can't smell cigarettes anymore because I'm like, I don't enjoy cigarettes anyway, but like they don't do anything for me. But he doesn't smoke the whole thing. He just smokes a little bit of it and then he puts it down. I'm like, you waste so much of your cigarettes, but oh well. Um, what about all the jewelry he has? Ridiculous. He is a big jewelry fan. He does love his jewels. I know at one point in 2019, I tried to help him with a lot of his financial stuff. And one of them was we were going to pawn some of his jewelry to try to get some debts paid down. And he was very upset because they didn't want to buy them from him. They wanted just to take the stones out so they could put it in women's jewelry because they just said it would be too hard to try and sell that to men. So that was it. Pete Werner is the Lionel Hutz of realtors. I am a huge Simpsons fan, so I really appreciate that reference. Except I love Lionel Hutz. But what's your favorite park? Epcot, 100% is my favorite park. In the world, Tokyo Disney Sea is my favorite of all the Disney parks, but here definitely that. And then water parks is actually Volcano Bay. I really love Volcano Bay. Do you realize you're sitting on a gold mine? You could write a book. I have plans. I always had plans someday to write about the pre-Pete portion of my life, just because all of that was wild, and then meeting Pete and all that. And then now I'm like, well, I got a sequel or I got a last half of a book. So we'll see. Did the company pay for your season pass to the parks? Yes. Well, Pete did. The company never saw me as an employee, so I was always paid through PayPal. So I never received any check. I never received a 1099. I never received anything from the company as the entire time that I worked. So yes. How did Panda ever get connected with the Diz? I have no idea. So I was actually around. It just randomly seemed to happen one day. I'm not sure how Panda made his way there because he already had his own show. Whatever happened to that British dude, Oliver? No idea. I never met Oliver. Started his own channel. I think that was about correct. Whatever happened to Oliver, started his own channel and disappeared. Yes. Do you know what's going to happen to See Disney? I have no idea. I don't even know what was ever happening to See Disney. Did it get popular? Like I'm not sure. And the name makes no sense. Yes, Disney. Because like Pete and I were in the planning process of this. And because my husband was born in Venezuela, he speaks Spanish. And we were brainstorming names, and Pete came up with See Disney. And my husband was like, but Spanish people would never say that. Like, that's not the way a Spanish speaker would refer to that as a thing. And Pete was like, yeah, it is. It's great. Like, and I was like, okay, like, well, here's someone who speaks Spanish that's saying it's not, but okay. So yes, Disney. Let's see. Why would people voluntarily port their number onto the company's phone account? Is that how Eric lost his phone number? Yes. So Pete, because it's a corporate account, it can have up to a certain number of lines on the account for only like a few extra dollars a month was the thing. And so rather than everyone having to have their own thing, it became an easy way to just say, hey, why don't you port your number into the company? Of course, you're like, oh, cool, great. Now I'm only out like $5 a month rather than $100 a month or whatever. And the company had an international phone package. So when we were overseas, that was covered. And there was a lot of insurance and that kind of stuff that the phone had through AT&T. But the problem was because Pete was the head of that line, he was the only person that AT&T would talk to. So if you tried to get your number taken out, AT&T won't give it. If Pete called and had your phone cut off because he's mad at you, you can't get it restarted, and they hold the number. So that was what happened. And that is what happened with Eric, how he lost his number. Um, that is that. He did get his number back though, or whatever. Like Pete did end up giving the number back. So after Eric posted publicly that Pete was like, "Oh, um, Drake story. I'll do something about the Drake story. It's just so real estate heavy that like I think it's people watching here. They're wanting like Pete drama and that stuff. The Drake thing. I don't think the Drake thing carries over enough into the Diz realm at all for it to be something worth mentioning in this. Has Corey Martin reached out to you? I have messaged a bit with Corey. I just don't. It's been pretty light, just because I know the position he's in, so I don't want to have to talk to him very much because I don't want to get him in a situation. Does everyone have a key to Pete's house? If not, how do they film when he's not home? Um, Door code. So like there people had different door codes, so you could get in then, but that was about it. But you had to schedule out with Pete pretty well. Hi, Sean. Are Pete's dogs safe with him? Yeah, they should be safe. I mean, as long as he's feeding them, and that's it. Like they're just hanging out at the house, I assume. Um, well, what's the worst thing he's ever said about Rhino and Craig? I'm not gonna say that. Like I can't, I can't say that. There's no way I could answer that question. I was one of the ones that won a Disney cruise through Give Kids the World raffle. It was a brilliant idea that you had, by the way, and I would never use Dreams Unlimited Travel again. Well, I'm glad that you won. I hope you enjoyed the cruise, actually. So the money goes to a really great cause, and it does generate a lot of families that get to go. I know mine. I want to say it did about 55,000. So that brought almost 10 families, like 9 families, I guess, got to go to give kids got to go to Disney based on that. So it was well worth it for sure. What was Pete like in team meetings? It's hateful. Like I just mad. It was just mad. But that's really the best way to talk about it. And just very upset with people. Very upset with elements. Like even then, he would start good, and then he would by the end of it, he's picked somebody and he's mad at him. So it's that. It's yeah. Do you think the Diz Unplugged team will get their media passes revoked for special events? It happened to Tim Tracker for problematic content. I'd say no. Um, I don't think they will, especially now. I mean, as far as Disney's view would be, they're making the steps that they're to go away from the situation. So like, they're addressing well, they're making some steps. So that's about it. And plus it's not as big as the trackers, I guess. So that's I actually had no idea who the trackers were until very recently. So if we want to pile on about me not being familiar with the Disney world, so it actually was when Danielle joined Moving to Orlando. She had said she was a big fan of the trackers. And I was like, I have no idea who that is. So she had said, she was like, oh, I hope we run into the trackers in the parks. I had no clue. I still don't have a clue because I've never seen them. I don't know what they look like. I don't know anything about their content. So I actually don't know. They do come up in conversation a lot though. Oh yeah. What are Pete's political views? I mean, I don't want to say somebody else's political views, but I don't think it'd be a far stretch to make a guess on his political views. Now, are they hypocritical? I don't know. So that'd be the bigger question. uh, Sean dropped the bombshell. Did you sleep with Rhino? I did not. That didn't happen. Rhino's been with his boyfriend, I guess. I don't know if their boyfriends are married for like 10 years or something like that. So no, actually, Ryan, I don't have Rhino's phone number, and we never have spoken outside of work. So we definitely didn't do that. I got accused of it a lot by Pete, but I did not do that. Why didn't the Diz cover the water parks? I can't say for sure. I know with moving to Orlando and with other things, Pete was very adamant about chest up because he didn't want anyone's like fat bodies being shown off. So I think that might have been a chunk of it, but I think it was just because like water parks were always an add-on, and ultimately the goal is to sell travel. So it's like, what are you going to do with that? But I go to the water parks all the time. I really like the water parks, so they're great. What's your favorite Kim Mattina memory? Thank you, Steven, for that. That would be Kim Mattina is not. That's a inside joke with a friend. Please write a book about the Diz stories. I'd have to get a ghostwriter because I'm not super literate. Um, wait, so that's why Kevin is always pushing that ABD. Yep. Did you ever meet Federico from See Disney? Was he with Pete? I'd never met Federico. I knew Pete had told me that he and Federico were dating and that he and Federico had told each other they loved each other. I very recently, after that, heard that Pete was engaged. I assumed that was to Federico, and somebody said no, it's to someone named Gio. And I was like, wait, when did Gio get back in the picture? Because Gio was in the picture when I was in the picture. So every time Pete was mad at me and done with that side and was like, we're done, he'd go to Geo. So I don't know. Uh, wait. Did you ever sit through the bubble talk? I don't know. I guess if you know, you know. I don't know. So I was on the outs on that one. Based on everything that has happened, is it safe to assume that Dreams or the Diz does not have an HR department? Oh God, no. If they did, they should be fired. If not, do you think they will reevaluate moving forward? No. No, probably not. But like but they definitely don't have an HR department. I can tell you that much. So, yep. Did you tell the pig story? Oh, that's Danielle of the pig story. Yeah. So that the Danielle that's in here is Danielle, who was an agent that was moved to Orlando. Um, Day one, upon Pete meeting her, he took she and I to Capitol Grill to eat and we have lunch, and so that he can meet Danielle. We went there to eat. We had just gotten back from Hawaii, and because I have my Alani points, I try every time I go to Alani to book a big enough place that any of my friends that could never afford to go to Alani or to go to Hawaii, anything like that, I will use the points to go. So me and my husband will go, and we will bring whatever friends want to go that can fit, and they don't have to pay for anything. They just need to pay for their flight to get there. And I had not flown to Hawaii before, not in first class. And because I'd only ever flown there with Pete and he always bought first class. So I always flew that way too. And Danielle was the first person flying with us that we were taking. And I knew she was just starting a new job, couldn't afford to pay for first class. So my husband and I decided we would sit in the economy section with her. And because we didn't want her to fly alone. And when we were telling Pete this, so one of the situations that came up is that I'm allergic to almonds. And this was during COVID. And for some reason on Delta, they only had almonds as the food that they were giving out. And so between the flight from Orlando to LA, I didn't get to eat. Then when we got to the airport, everything was shut down because it was California during COVID. So none of the restaurants were open in the airport. So I still didn't get to eat. Then on the flight, the next flight going out, it was still almonds again. So I had to go like 13, 14 hours without any food. And I was really, really hungry. So I was telling this anecdotally to Pete, and he was like, I cannot believe in first class they only had almonds. And I said, no, well, they didn't. It wasn't first class. We were in economy. And he's like, oh my God, why? Like, why are you sitting in economy? And I was like, well, Danielle here like couldn't afford to do it. So I didn't want her to fly alone. And so we sat in the back with her. And he was like, well, then I guess you got what you deserved if you're going to sit back there with the pigs. And he pointed at her when he said it. And obviously, I mean, she's like a 23-year-old girl that's just starting her first day at a job and now has been told she's one of the pigs that's in the back. And or the unwashed pigs, that's what it was. So now she's the unwashed pig that's sitting in the back, and we're slumming it back there with her, I guess, and like eating out of hog troughs or whatever he thinks happens in the back of a plane. And she was upset or whatever, and she didn't let it show. And I also told Pete, I'm like, what are you talking? Why should I have to eat almonds that I'm allergic to just because I'm sitting in economy? Like I should have to be allergic to my food because I'm not sitting in first class. Like, so everything about it was just psychotic. Like it was super rude. That is illegal in terms of employment. That probably was about something before. I'm not sure. At any point did I live in Pete's house? No, I've never lived in Pete's house. Was Pete good with his dogs? I'm worried about his dogs. Pete was good to his dogs. He had does a lot of training with them. They are like military trained, so they are very regimented, I guess would be the word. Mine aren't, but I think they have a better time. So let's see. How is Pete's relationship with Teresa? They get along great. Him and Teresa are great. I think Teresa's super funny. Like she's an enjoyable person to be around. I've seen the comments about Teresa, so I get it as far as like being on a show and stuff. But she's a really fun, funny person when you're just around her. Would you consider opening a travel agency? Oh God, no. I wasn't even a good travel agent when I worked at that travel agent. When I worked for Dreams, so like, there's no way. I like real estate. I do enjoy real estate. So I would continue on in that trajectory or something completely different, but not travel. It's great to see how much happier you are. Oh, thank you. Uh, You sounded like so much happier. Thank you. Do you feel Pete is racist towards Latinx people? I don't think directly. Like, I don't think he specifically has a problem with people who are Latin at all. I think he just, I think his humor is certainly not PC and it just doesn't fly these days. So like I think that's a big part of it. And that for him it's all in good fun. But for other people, times are more sensitive at this point than they were. And people are kind of looking back and being like, hey, maybe I shouldn't have made that joke. I mean, there's off-color jokes I've made, with friends or whatever, like, at times where I can look back and be like, oh, like, if I'd been being recorded, like, would I feel good about what I said? Kind of thing. So I think it's just about looking back and being like, hey, I might need to straighten up. And I don't think Pete is going to do that. So I don't think he's going to straighten up. Sorry if you addressed this already. How do you feel John Magi is handling things at the Diz? I don't know because he's not the owner of the Diz, so like he doesn't have any control with the Diz. So that's really where the question mark comes into play. Is like Pete's still technically the owner of it, but Corey's the president of it. So it's like I don't know who's doing what in that. Did Pete have respect for anyone in his life other than his mom? Josh Damaro, he seems to respect him. So him, maybe. He liked Elton John. We didn't meet him, but he likes him. If Neiman Marcus is a person, he probably respects him. Let's see. Don't you feel so much better? Oh, yes, I do feel much better now. Bubble talk was when Pete needed his entourage around when he soaked in a hot tub on the DCL. I ain't ever seen Pete get in a body of water ever. So that's way before my time. Do you think Disney vlogging in general is going to decline in popularity at some point? Is the market getting too oversaturated? I think it is. I mean, you can get your resources from wherever. I think there'll just be a couple of big players that people tend to watch, and then you really have to have an inroad somewhere to get big, would be my guess. But yeah, it's pretty oversaturated. Did you ever have feelings for Pete at any time, like at the start, or was it all being blinded by flashy gifts and love bombing? I I tried to like Pete, and there were times where he would show these very good elements because he is very giving with his money. He's actually not a money greedy person. Because my husband and I were talking about last night, he's not a money greedy person where he's trying to like hoard his money. He's trying to hoard love. Is like where he's trying to get it. He just doesn't know how to get. He doesn't understand love and to know when it's there. So it's a thing where the things that I did like about him and recognize in him would completely get destroyed like the second he started in on me, because he would say the worst things that anybody's ever said to me. He would ditch me places and purposefully leave me without money and all these things where I'm like, this is not something that an okay person does. Like, this is just not something a well person does. And really the first time I remember that was he bought me for Christmas in 2017 a trip to Alani, which I'd never been. That was my first trip out there. And we went to Disneyland a few days before. And it was myself, him, Tyler and Katrina, and Steve Porter and his wife, Michaela. And we went out and we did Pete's regular cycle, which I guess you can look back at videos and see the only time Pete's on a ride is if it's Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, or It's a Small World. And that is the only rides that he does. Very rarely have I seen him get on something else. So we're doing our rounds. We're doing them 3 rides over and over again. So myself, Katrina, and Michaela were chatting during lunch, and we said, oh, it would be really fun to do Big Thunder Mountain here because Big Thunder Mountain's much better out here than it is in Disney World. I had worked at Big Thunder Mountain at Disney World, so I knew a lot of insider things that I was able to tell them, and they're like, oh, I want to ride it and check that out now. So somebody said at lunch, oh, what are we doing after we leave here? And I said, oh, well, we were talking about maybe we should ride Big Thunder Mountain. Pete got very upset that it wasn't consulted with him that we should ride Big Thunder Mountain. We did go and go on the ride. He was really mad at me the rest of the day. Then something happened where he had been making jokes about me a lot and, calling me Jethro, saying making fun of me because I didn't know a designer Hermes, because I said like Hermes because I assumed it was like the Greek god, but I didn't know Hermes, and so he had been mocking me and stuff. But I really just thought, okay, that's his humor, so I can make jokes at him too, and it's fine. And I made an off-color joke towards him that was pretty tame. I don't remember what it was, but Pete got really upset with me, and then we were supposed to go to Alani the next day from there, and he let me know he was not coming to Alani. And I finally was like, hey, listen, well, I'm just going to get a plane ticket and fly home. I'm out. And he was like, no, you just go by yourself. And I was like, I'm not going to Hawaii by myself. Like, I have no money, and I'm not going, and I'm not going to Hawaii by myself. There's no way. And so he didn't come to Hawaii. Like, the next morning rolled around. I fully expected him to get in the car because we had a driver. I thought he was going to get in the car. I thought he would calm down. I thought he'd get on the plane. He didn't get on the plane. And me and my Winnie the Pooh stuffed animal took our business class seats, and we flied flat and flew to Hawaii. And that's where I sat for 8 days. So I did actually end up going to Hawaii. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. Like, forget this. So but I was still like, okay, you know what? Like, you're mad at me over this comment. I've apologized till I don't have any wind left in me, and you're ditching me now or whatever. And because you're mad. So you know what? Like, I'm out. And he knew I had no money because he had given me, I had left with no money, like my credit card and stuff, because he had given me a copy of his credit card to use that he had. And then of course he cut it off. So I was like, wow, great. Now I'm here and I don't have any way to buy food or anything. So that was fun. I'm really glad that you're in a better place. I'm glad she can laugh about that now. Is Pete a bad person? I would say, yeah. Yeah. Did Pete have many friends? No. In Pete's final episode, there was a rather awkward interaction between Pete and Teresa where he rudely said she had been talking enough. I'm not sure what their relationship's like. I've always thought they had a good relationship, so I've never thought they had a bad one or anything. I mean, because she was his sister-in-law for so long, they have a jokey relationship. But I mean, it is still a power dynamic thing that exists and is there. Bearing in mind Pete's substance abuse history and depression, can you see him back on the streets again if made bankrupt? And if that happened, do you think he would deserve it? I mean, if he makes those choices, he makes those choices. I mean, I don't necessarily know that anybody deserves it. Cause I mean, regardless, all of this, cause people have been saying a lot, they're like, oh, Sean, like you did this, or like, I can't, like, for me, I'm like, I didn't do anything. I just, like, Pete's the one who spent the money. Pete's the one who drugged people, filmed people, raped people, abused people. Like, for me, I'm like, he's the one who did all these things. And I'm not the only one saying this stuff. So it's where there's smoke, there's fire. And with that fire, a lot of people have a lot of receipts. So, and I don't see anybody lining up to Pete's favor here and supporting and saying like, no, these people are lying. So even the people closest to Pete aren't stepping up and saying, hey, we don't believe these people. Sean, did you ever meet Walter? I did meet Walter. I met him once. So we had a dinner once with him and Pete, or with him and his husband, George. And that was me and Pete. So, yep, it was fairly generally uneventful. with the exception that apparently Walter's now husband was Pete and Walter's marriage counselor when they were married. So that was weird. Um, uh, was Pete's Grand Floridian review fair? I wasn't there. I knew he was upset because I was like supposed to be there maybe, and he was mad in the moment because I didn't. He was fighting with me before and I didn't come, so I know he went into that in a pretty bad mood. But I've never actually seen the video. I've just heard what happened in the video. I would imagine it was pretty overblown, but that's what I would imagine. So like of all things, so um as I watched you appearing to be in such a good place, all I can think about is the karma of that. So Pete's more like Charles Foster Kane then. I actually don't know who that is. Huh. Um, uh, who did Pete hate most? Pete hates himself the most. What happened to Steve? Did he quit? Steve did quit. His wife Michaela really wanted to go back to Utah and start a family, but I also know that uh, I do know that Pete wanted a lot of his time as well. So I know that was a big chunk of things. But Michaela really just wanted to go back to Utah and wanted to be with her family. So that I think that was the bulk reason of everything. Sean, did you ban all caps? I know. Like I've never done this before, so I didn't ban anything. So I just made it where people can't post more than every 10 seconds. So Sean, did you ban all caps? I tried sending a few messages and seem like they are not getting through. You helped us in 1221. You look, oh, why did Pete leave so suddenly from the show? Or Ruben leave so suddenly from the show? His wife, as with Michaela, his wife wanted to move back to Delaware to be with her family. So there he went. So he left and moved on as well. While reading all about this from the Diz boards and Facebook, I thought for the longest time that they were referring to Sean Thompson, not you. Forget there were two Seans at the Diz. Yeah, it's the spelling, and then people spell my name like his name, and so people get confused as to who people are talking about. How did you end up spending those days? Did you find a way to cover those expenses? Sean, what'd you do for money for those 8 days? I think we can figure out what I did for the 8 days to make money. So I went back to old habits. So I found a way. Did Pete ever come to the realization I was right about COVID? I I don't know. I don't know what happened between you and Pete with COVID. So I don't know. Like you'd have to ask him. The last after show at Pete's, everyone seemed so relaxed. Do you think it's because at that point Pete no longer had access to his house / had disappeared? They had to have. I don't know. That would be my only guess with that. Did Pete purchase your Alani contract? He did. I was told that it was a thank you from the company because I had done so much with DVC because we were working with DVC Store and I wasn't getting any bonuses or compensation or anything for that work that I was doing. And I had set up this thing called Slick Text, which is a really long process to get the tech on that going. And so I was working with them to get that done from the ground up. Pete said the company was buying me that as a thank you. I told him no because number one, we did resale stuff. So why would I buy direct with Disney? That completely contradicts the entire thing that we push. And also, I could get more points for the same amount of money. And also, I didn't want to be indebted to him. And because he had already bought my mother a car and I was already on the hook for that money. So I couldn't afford to get on the hook for more money. This was before real estate. So I didn't have the money that I do now to be able to get out of those situations. And so he said like, no, we'll purchase it. And then the next payroll that comes around, I'll go ahead and pay the entire contract off. So I said, okay, obviously that didn't happen. He held it over my head for the next several years until I sold enough in real estate that I went ahead and paid the contract off. And then the next time he held it over my head, I got to show him the paid receipt purchase. So how close was the sale in 2019 and who was the potential buyer? The potential buyer was Corey and Craig was that. And as far as I know, that deal fell through because of the terms not being good. I know it was a situation about being able to call in a lot of the money. If like certain minimum payment had to be made per month, and if it wasn't, then the money would have to go back, or like shares would revert back or something along those lines. Obviously, I never saw the contracts. I wasn't in those conversations. That was just like the swirling rumors within the company. And also with talking to Pete, that was stuff Pete had told me that he was putting in there. And I know it wasn't agreeable for them. With Corey and Craig were like, no, and they backed out. Did you like the studio redesign? I remember you seeing it during the early moving to Orlando days, and it was interesting. I did not like the redesign because it wasn't functional in the way it was supposed to be. The living room setup where I was in was supposed to be it's supposed to be more talk show where two people could be on camera at the same time. Did the entire thing, and then Pete refused to go sit in the living room setting, so he wanted to sit in front of like a brick wall setting. So we were just in two different places. It was stupid. It didn't make any sense. So I was glad we reverted back to the old way, because at least it made sense to a degree. And I'll answer just a few more because it's getting on to 2 hours. But where to go? Did Pete drink when he was with you when he was supposed to be sober? No, Pete did not drink. As far as I know. Do you like the response statements from the Diz, and how are they currently handling it? I mean, John's statement was not a statement I would have made. Corey's statement is better than the statement John made, and I think it's getting better as well. So I would say yeah, that I like the statement that Corey put out. Does Pete own all the cameras? Yes. I would say the Diz owns all the cameras. They're probably part of the LLC that's there. So I'll say yes, that Pete probably does own all the cameras. Wait, Pete doesn't have access to his house. Yeah, Pete has access to his house, as far as I know. I was reading someone's question before. They said Pete didn't have access to his house, but I don't know why they said that. Because he should have access to his home. That's awesome. You paid off the contract. Oh, thank you. Still no buyers for Pete's shares. I don't know how they're doing with the sale. This just happened. I mean, to find someone who's got to buy not just a company, but a company that the face of it is now the vilified person, or the villain, not vilified. Yeah, whatever. So like now it's like, what's the company worth when Pete was the company for most people? I mean, people watch the Diz for Pete for the most part. So what's the value at that point? Which is the same thing that happened with me moving to Orlando, because I had become the main person on there. So when I want to sell it, everyone's like, well, if I buy it from you and you leave, who's the new realtor to be the face of the show? So I couldn't sell the thing. So I think they're going to run into that same problem. Does Pete seem fake / act different on the show versus real life? No, actually, I think he acts exactly the same way. I think he's a little more, it's just, he's a little calmer, but I think it's that he just can direct that rage at Disney and like their employees rather than at the people surrounding him and the audience. So he's pretty much the same way as far as personality goes. I wonder how much the purchase price for Pete's share of the company. I have no idea. How many DVC points would you say Pete has? I don't know on that. I know at one point he had bought a Boulder Ridge for like 700. It was 700 points there. And I know he had several others that were a couple hundred. So I would say at his most, he was probably around 1,300. I know there was a time when he was selling them off from what I heard. So I think he'd even sold that 700 point one at one time. So I don't know what he has at this time. Sean, can Dreams actually remove themselves as liable from the $800,000 debt? That I don't know. I'm not an attorney, so I can't really speak to it, but it will depend on what exactly the circumstances that they're claiming why Pete was the president of that company. And so it is within reason that I would think that he should be able to open a credit card with that company, and the company already had American Express credit cards. So if he did open a new card, why would American Express question him opening another one? Like, that shouldn't really be a question. I think it's just, are the charges fraudulent? And then it becomes a thing where just dreams at that point would have to go and say, hey, he defrauded us, which that's a whole other thing. So if that becomes the question, what do you think Pete's net worth is? I mean, it's not looking it's not looking high right now. I don't know exactly, but it's not looking like a lot. Why was Pete difficult with dining reimbursements? Amex has an app that allows you to upload receipts through your phone because the money wasn't there. Like you'd have to wait for more money to come in to reimburse the money from previous. Like there wasn't money coming in. It was any money that was coming in, he was spending it. So he would just have to wait. Um, were you a fan of Pete's tastes? Oh no, 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 no. Like it's just not my style. There were certain things he had bought me. I really like David Yurman and Joe Hardy, John Hardy. That was really the only things like jewelry wise, but I'm not into that kind of stuff anyway. And then I have some Tom Ford cologne now that I really like. So it never was like the shirts and all that kind of stuff, but no, I didn't really care for that type of stuff. So not my style. And I don't really know that it was his style either, but Sean, what's next for you? Just doing real estate. So that's what I'm still around doing. Right now, I've had a lot of travel plans just because I thought I would still have a real estate team when I booked a lot of the travel for the year. So that did not happen. So luckily things have been on the slower side. So I've been able to mentally decompress and relax. And so I will be in Asia a few weeks next month. And then I will be in Australia in February. So I'm very good at finding business class tickets for very cheap. So that's if I find one, I'll jump on it as a situation. How much do you think it would take to buy Pete out of his share of the business? I don't. It'd be several $1,000,000 that it would take, but I don't know exactly how much, but it would definitely be multiple millions. Do you regret joining, moving to Orlando, or do you believe that everything happens for a reason? How do you see yourself if you never joined the company? Would you still be in the same place as today and in Florida? I am very happy that moving to Orlando was created. It really allowed me to have the opportunity to grow as a realtor because I had my license before the show, but I didn't do anything actively with it. And I really feel like I found something that I got to be good at and feel like, hey, I'm getting to help people. It pays well. And I also enjoy it. Huge headache on the back end, but we did get to help a lot of people. So I'm happy about that. And I think everything does happen for a reason. And I think I came out of it better. It allowed me to get out of being under Pete's thumb to the point where I had a little more flexibility to branch off and try to do stuff. Has anyone heard from Pete since all this hit the fan? I don't think so, actually. I'm sure he's been in touch with some people, but as far as I've heard, no. Having to wait for new revenue to come in to pay for the past expenses is not normal or okay. Yep, I agree. It's not. What's the website for your real estate company? Would like to check that out. Thanks. So there, right now, there isn't a website for that. Moving to Orlando is still the only one. Like that's the one my husband owns. And I mean, people can still contact me and I can help you to purchase something, but we're trying to get all the legalities fixed and everything with my husband being part of that company and trying to get that because he can't be helping me with a different company with editing and all that stuff because it's conflicting with what their deal is there. So we're just trying to get that all worked out. You were in Hawaii during COVID, and I remember Pete going live with you, and it seemed so forced. Oh God, yeah. I do remember that. I forgot. We do more of these live streams. Yes, I would be willing to. I mean, this was 2 hours, so I don't know how often, but I would be willing to do them. Do you think Teresa knows what kind of person Pete is? I, to a degree. I mean, she knows his personality. I don't think she knows he was like drugging and raping people, but I think she knows his personalities and stuff. The pups are outside. I don't want to let them in this second, but I'll post a photo maybe. Have you heard from Dustin recently? We were messaging about 2 or 3 days ago, so I know he's around at least, but I think he's not been on Tattle much lately. And I'll answer like 2 more. Can't you and your husband start your own company and sell moving to Orlando entirely? Yes, but we'd have to find a buyer. So that's the problem there. So, and then whoever that purchaser is would also need to buy Ruben's share of it. And then Pete needs to get paid off out of Ruben's share, which there's no way it would bring in enough money to pay Pete off. So then there's the lawsuits. So like, then it's like, well, what happens there? So yeah. And then last one, what's your favorite table service restaurant in Epcot? It actually used to be Restaurant Marrakesh, which just hasn't been opened in an eternity. And then it moved to being Takumete, which also was closed forever. When that reopened, I went back and did the prefix meal, and I really didn't like it. I didn't think that was worth the money at all. So I would say on the front end or on the, I recently ate at the San Angel Inn, the outside restaurant in Mexico. We got the like seafood platter for 2. Me and my husband split it. It was really, really good. So definitely recommend that. There's a lot of great restaurants there. I think it's more about individual meals that I like there, but Restaurant Marrakesh was definitely always my favorite at Epcot. Um, let me just see. I'll do any weight loss tips. I started losing weight doing 12-3-30 on the treadmill every day. So you do a 12 incline at 3 miles an hour for 30 minutes a day. It burns about 500 or 600 calories. So it like freed me up to like start a little bit with that wiggle room. But yeah, 12-3-30 was how things got started. And it was enough to start giving me like energy to do more stuff from there. So that's the least impact thing I would say. Like swimming, I guess would be a good one. Yeah. So okay, that'll do it for tonight. Sorry this went so much longer than I thought it would. I'm sure my husband is anxiously waiting on me to be done with this. So I'm gonna run, but thanks everybody for sitting through this, and I hope you got some information out of it that can help put pieces together for your own selves to move forward with the shock of everything that's happening. All right.